Are continuing to talk about really looking at the Sermon on the Mount in particular. Children are dismissed for junior church. So when Jesus said something, Jesus said a lot of things that were shocking. He said a lot of things that were hard and difficult. And what we like to do is we like to soften those, right? We like to make them easier. We like to make them easier to live. And so we're like, well, Jesus didn't really mean this. What he really meant was this. And so we kind of try and make it a little easier to follow, a little easier to obey. Where when what Jesus said, there was an edge to it and there was a harshness to it, and he intended for it to be that way. He wanted it to be that way. And so we're looking at this whole idea of seriously. When Jesus said this, he was serious about it, and he meant it, and he means it not just for then, but for us today. Today we want to talk about the fun subject of obedience. When I was a kid, and my dad's here, so I might lie a little bit, I don't know. But I was a pretty obedient kid. I listened fairly well. Now I will admit, he's giving me the eye. That I didn't always do it in the right time or the right way. You know, we lived on a farm, and if I went to do chores, you know, I might find a stick to pick up on the way. I might find a stone to kick. I might find, you know, something going to the hay mow to get hay. I might play in the hay for a little while before I do what I'm supposed to do. You know, I obeyed. Eventually. You know, but when I hated parent-teacher conferences as a child, because I knew when my mom and dad would show up, it was always a behavior issue. Some of it was schoolwork, but you know, you focus on the thing that's the most obvious and the most obnoxious. And it was my behavior, because I was a little bit spastic. I was a little bit distracted, shall we say, in some things. And I would obey. I didn't always do it in the right time and in the right way, you know, exactly how it's, you know, there's open to interpretation sometimes. And the time frame, you know, was kind of open-ended. It wasn't, you know, I thought about, I know there's a bunch of military people here. I thought about maybe joining the military one time. That would not be good. You know, I get an order like, nah, I'll get to it eventually, you know, but that wouldn't go over too well, so military was out. Obedience to rules can be a struggle sometimes. And I think can we all say maybe we struggle with that a little bit? It's kind of a human nature thing that you tell me something to do and we can be resistant to it, and we can say, well, I don't really like it that way. I'd prefer to do it this way. We join groups, you know, and it's like-minded, where we think certain ways. We join groups, don't we? Whether it's a union or whether it's a certain club or whatever. I was in the 4-H when I was a kid, and you know, we had this like-minded, you know, farmers that had showing hogs or whatever in the fair. You know, we join these groups because we are like-minded and we are in one, and we like to do the same things, or we have the same passions or whatever. I mean, you could find a group for anything, can't you? I mean, I didn't know there was a guy in a previous church as a part of a train group, a toy train group. I wants to be a part of a toy train. That's apparently a pretty big deal in the toy train group, passionate people. And we could find this group for anything where we identify, some of us by behavior, by passions, by beliefs, whatever the case may be. We identify and we join that group and we participate in that group. The thing about the church is it's very similar. You know, these groups, 4-H, unions, clubs, you don't have to join, right? You don't have to participate. But if you join, if you sign up willingly, there are expectations and requirements that come along with that, aren't there? I mean, if you hire into a job, there are certain expectations placed on you by the employer. Now, you don't have to obey them, but if you work there, you have to, right? Now, if the employer says you got to be at work at 8 o'clock, how successful are you going to be if you open that to interpretation and say, well, 8 o'clock, what time zone? You know, are we talking Central Time? Are we talking Mountain Time? You know, 8 o'clock for you is my 10 o'clock. You know, if we say that, now what's the boss going to say? No. You know, this is the expectation. If you have to wear a uniform, that's not open to interpretation. You have to wear the uniform, right? We accept that. But when it comes to the church, sometimes we like to fudge. And we like to interpret. And we like to say, well, did he really? I mean, what happened with Adam and Eve in the garden? Did God really say? Is that really what he meant? Come on. He wasn't serious. I mean, why would he say that? I mean, doing that's good. That's good stuff if you do that. So it's okay. I mean, that's what we hear all the time. Like the passage that we read from Deuteronomy earlier says, people will know you're mine. Others will know that you're my people if. So there is this condition that now is placed on what it means to be a Christian, on what it means to be a follower of Christ. You will be my people if. You will receive these blessings if. You will receive these good things if you will. So there's these conditions. Now, you don't have to be my people. In the Old Testament, we know that was Israel, but it was also open to others. We all know that Gentiles joined the nation of Israel and could be a part of God's people as well. So it's always been open to some degree, but in the New Testament, we know it's open to all people. Now, we don't have to join. We don't have to say yes. We don't have to receive his forgiveness. We have that choice. We have that ability. We have that option. But if we join, now there's some parameters, now there's some guidelines, now there's some rules, now there's some structure that we have to follow. Now this morning I'm talking to the church. This morning, if you don't know Jesus, I'm talking to you, and I hope the Holy Spirit speaks to you, but I'm really talking to the church this morning. The Sermon on the Mount was a conversation that Jesus was having with the church. He was having with his specific followers. And so he says this in Matthew chapter 7. He says this to them. Not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, that's pretty scary right there. Billy Graham at one point said 70% of the church, 70% of the church thinks they're going to heaven, but aren't. Now, I don't know where he got that stat from. I don't know if he made it up. I don't know if it's just experience. I don't know if there was a study. But that's just what Billy Graham said. 70%. So, I mean, Jesus is saying that not everyone who calls out to me, Lord, Lord. Not everyone who calls and says, I'm a Christian, is going to enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those who actually do the will of my Father in heaven will enter. On Judgment Day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, we prophesied in your name and cast out demons in your name and performed many miracles in your name. But I will reply, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who break God's laws. Anyone who listens to my teaching and follows it is wise, like a person who builds a house on solid rock. Though the rain comes in torrents and the floodwaters rise, and the winds beat against that house, it won't collapse because it's built on bedrock. But anyone who hears my teaching and doesn't obey it is foolish, like a person who builds a house on sand. When the rains and floods come and the winds beat against the house, it will collapse with a mighty crash. And Jesus had finished saying these things. The crowds were amazed at his teaching, for he taught with real authority, quite unlike the teachers of religious law. See, as I've said over the last few weeks, we tend to do math, it's 100%. That's it. There's 100%. Percentages can change, but always it can only go to 100%. God's math is a little bit different. Yes, and I don't want to misunderstand anything that I'm saying this morning. Yes, we are saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone. We just celebrated that. But there's also another 100%. And the 100% is behavior. The 100% is obedience to what God has called us to. That there is a both and aspect to God's commands, God's call in our life, God's expectations of our life. That we can't just say, well, I'm a Christian. We can't just pray the prayer and then keep on living like we want to live. There has to be a behavioral change. There has to be an attitudinal change. There has to be an obedience aspect to our life that, yes, we have to do this. Jesus spells it out very clearly here that, hey, you can even do some things good. That doesn't get you into heaven. There's the grace and there's the works. James 1:22 says this, don't just merely listen to the words. You got to do what it says. I mean, we can sit here and listen if you don't fall asleep. You can sit here and listen, you can hear the words, you can sit in the Sunday school class, you can read Scripture, but if you don't do what it says, it's meaningless. James goes on to say, so you say you have faith, big deal. You believe in Jesus, so what? Even the demons believe that. What's your life like? How are you living? There's an obedience that we have to have in our life as followers of Christ that He says that we have to do it. It's not one of those things that we can, well, He didn't really mean that. Remember a couple weeks ago we talked about orthodoxy and orthopraxy. Orthodoxy is right belief. We can take pride in our right belief in heaven, right theology. Orthopraxy is right behavior, right living. So if we have the proper theology, if we have proper beliefs, we can believe that God sacrificed. We can believe that Jesus was the Son of God. We can believe these things, but if we don't have the right behavior, word we often hear is hypocrisy. You're a hypocrite. Yeah, you believe it, but you don't live it. You're a hypocrite. But when we line up right belief and right behavior, now we're a Christian. Now we're who Jesus is talking about, who Jesus called us to. Right behavior, right belief. We have to have both, church. We have to have both. We can't just sit and soak. We can't just be a sponge and just constantly take in and say, well, teaching, Bible study. We have to live it. We have to go out and do it and put it into practice. It's not just what's best, it's what's right, it's what's required. It's what's expected of us. If you go back to the text and you look at verse 21, 24, and 26, depending on your translation, I read this out of the New Living Translation. In verse 21 it says do, verse 24 has the word follow, and verse 26 it says who doesn't obey. The do aspect, the follow, the doesn't do, it's all the same Greek word from the Latin, meaning to perform. So if you perform, verse 24, those who perform, verse 26, those who don't perform. So there is this performance that Jesus is expecting from the church. There is a behavior that expects us to act like Him, to think like Him, to talk like Him, to do what He did, to go where He went, to do all of these things. There is the expectation that Jesus says here, you have to perform, you have to, liberty means to meet its demands. That's the church. That's what we signed up for. Now, like I said, you don't have to sign up for it. You don't have to say, yes, I want to be a Christian. You don't have to ask Jesus to forgive you. You don't have to do these things. But if you've done it, if you've raised your hand, if you've prayed, if you said, yes, Lord, if in your quiet of your soul, whether it's in an altar or in a woods or wherever, you said, yes, Jesus. There are expectations for us. There are demands placed on us to do what He says. Now, the love your neighbor thing, how do we flesh that out? Well, the way I love my neighbor, the way you love your neighbor, that's going to be different. But the standard is to love your neighbor. The standard is to be selfless, not selfish. That's the standard. Now, I'm glad I don't have to judge. You don't want me to judge. But the expectation is to love your neighbor. How do you love God? Well, again, how you love Him and how I love Him is different. How He speaks is different. I mean, some of you to go out and sit in the middle of a woods by yourself, that's the most spiritual thing you can do. Some of you are like, that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I don't think anybody wants to just go sit in the woods. Some of you have a spiritual experience at Joanne Fabrics. We're all different. How God speaks, how we obey, we're different. Let me ask this question. How will you love your server at the restaurant you're going to go to after church? Will your behavior look like Jesus's? When it comes to, I got to tell myself again. Our first house that Becky and I lived in, I had a neighbor. He was just a pain in the rear. To me, in my opinion, okay? He was just a crotchety old man. And he constantly mowed my yard. Just the corner of my yard. And he turned around in my yard with his blades going. It just drove me nuts. Because he mowed his shorter than mine, and it just looked horrible. That's my grass. Stay out of my yard. Yes, I'm one of those people. Get off my grass. Yeah. So, property line, I sprayed with Roundup. Show him. My property. I felt so guilty. How is that loving my neighbor? I mean, it's 10 square feet of my back corner of my yard. Why do I care so passionately about my grass that I cared more about that than I did about him? That I made both of our yards look nasty because now we have this brown right angle in the yard. It's my property and I stay off my grass. That's not living like Jesus. It's not loving my neighbor. It's the requirement. It's the expectation. You look at verse 21 and verse 24. So in verse 21, the second half of that verse says, only those who do the will of my Father in heaven will enter the kingdom. And then verse 24 says this, anyone who listens to my teaching. So Jesus says, so it's the will of my Father and my teaching. So Jesus is setting the standard here of obedience. Of the will of the Father, the teaching of Jesus. It's not David Jeremiah, it's not Joel Osteen, it's not any other, it's not Max Lucado, it's not anybody, it's not Michael Alexander. It's the teachings of Jesus. It's the will of the Father. That's the standard. Are you? Are you living this way? Are you being obedient to His Word? Do you read it through a cultural lens and say, I don't like that. There's a lot of parts of the Bible I'd like to rip out. I mean, if we're honest, I don't want to have to live. I don't want to love that neighbor who mows my grass. It's my grass. I don't want to love the neighbor's dog it's not my standard. Jesus doesn't say follow the teachings of Michael Alexander. Follow the teachings of whoever. Follow my teaching, the will of the Father. That's the standard. Are you? Gandhi said this. It is the action, not the fruit of the action, that is important. It is the action, not the fruit of the action, that is important. See, when it comes to obedience to Scripture, we obey because it's the action. We obey because that's what's important. It's just the doing it. Now, we read back in Matthew chapter 5, the blessings. And we can want the good stuff, right? But that's wanting the fruit of the action. I'm going to do this so that I get. I'm going to do this so that God blesses. I'm going to do this so, and you fill in the blank. I'm going to do this so I can get a better job. I'm going to love my neighbor so that because my neighbor will give something to me. I'm going to love on my neighbor because my neighbor has a beautiful garden and maybe I don't have to plant a garden. I can get his fruit. Give me the zucchini. You can give me the squash. So I'm going to be nice to my neighbor so that I can get. I'm going to be nice to my great uncle because they're rich and I might get an inheritance. The action is what is important. The action of just simply being obedient, of just simply doing what's right because it's right and because we love Jesus and because it's what's expected and required of us. We simply do it for that, and there is the motivation, there is the reward in that alone. It's not because we get something that motivates us. That's what I love about this saying. It's the action that is important. It's not the fruit of the action. Are you being obedient simply because it's what Scripture said, simply because you love Jesus? A relationship with Christ that we never ask. Obedience is never about what's in it for me. What do I get? Okay, Jesus, we enter into this bargain, this negotiation with Him, and we think, well, okay, I want to do this, you do that. We all like that. I don't know what we like to negotiate, but we all negotiate. We negotiate for cars, we negotiate for houses, we negotiate contracts, we do all these negotiations. You give a little something, I'll give a little something. Maybe neither of us are fully happy or fully get everything that we want, but we kind of come to this agreement, we come to this middle ground. Have you been negotiating with Jesus? Have you been negotiating with the Holy Spirit? Say, you know, Jesus, okay, I'll do this, but I want a little of this. You know, come on. And we think that we can bargain with Him. Number 21 and 24, it's the Father's will, it's my teaching. Period. Period. But we have to take His word seriously. We have to look at it, the words on the page, and say, man, I don't like that. Really, why can't I do it my way? Why can't I cheat a little? If it doesn't hurt anybody, really, why can't I do it that way? Why can't I get mine? Because He says no. I've created problems for people with taxes because I have a standard. You got to do things right. And you may not report this, but I'm going to report that I gave it to you. Not because I want to get you in trouble. You guys know what 1099s are for taxes? It's tax season. So as an organization, if somebody does work, you get a 1099. You don't have to report it. You don't have to record it. But I'm telling the IRS, I gave it to you. I was like, well, you don't have to, right? I mean, well, yeah, I do. It's called integrity. It's called doing things right. It's about being right. It's about being obedient and saying, nah, it's okay. See, obedience messes with your life. Obedience can create a lot of difficulty. Obedience can be problematic. Because now you have to, okay, am I going to kind of go this way and try and make life a little bit easier, a little more convenient, a little better for me, a little better for my family, a little better for friends, you know, just maybe it's not wrong. We try and split that hair. We make fun of, some of you will remember, if you're probably over the age of 35-ish, you'll remember a famous person said, well, how do you define is? How do you define the word is? You know, did I, was I, you know, how do you define is? Like, we're splitting hairs here, aren't we? How do we do that with God? Depends on what the definition of the word is. In obedience, we can do that. Well, you know, Dad, I got the chores done. It took me 3 hours. And it should have taken me 10 minutes, but man, I had fun with sticks and stones and frogs and creeks. And I eventually got there. Is that wrong? Again, I'm glad I'm not the judge. But it's obedience, and it's doing things right. It's doing things the way He expects us to. It's His will. It's His teaching, not mine, not anybody else's. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to sign up for that? There's an old African proverb. You've probably heard it before. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Jesus says there's the broad road and the narrow road. The narrow road is hard to find. We think that the narrow road, which is an analogy for following Jesus, that it's easy to go a certain way. It's easy to go with the flow. It's easy to go with the crowd. It's easy to go with culture. It's easy to go the broad road. It's easier. Narrow is the road that leads to salvation. Narrow is the road. It's hard to find. And we think that narrow sometimes means isolation. It means alone, because it's hard to find. And it says, not many find it. But the reality is that it's not a lonely journey. That's what the church is for. And we're looking around this room and we all say, yes, I'm a Christian. We all say, yes, I'm a follower of Jesus. Yes, I want to be. That's why we gather. It's why Hebrews tells us, hey, don't stop meeting together. Don't give up on this time. We need one another. You need me and I need you on this journey to encourage one another and say, hey, stick to the plan. Stick to the goal. Stick to the dream. Stick to the purpose. And then we help each other. Now, Becky and I did a 12-mile hike this was last summer, wasn't it? On vacation, did this beautiful 12-mile hike. And if it was alone, I might have sat down and died. My knees were hurting, my hips were hurting, my back. I was feeling every bit of 50. And I was feeling probably more like 80, 90. Like, I just want to die. I'm going to find this dead stump and I'm going to crawl inside and I'm just going to be good. Nobody will know. But we were together. We were together and we shared the journey. We shared the load. We shared water. Shared the snacks. Shared the experience. Have you ever been a part of a group where you wanted to quit, but you got somebody else there urging you on and spurring you on and challenging you? And sometimes you're the encourager, sometimes you're the encouraged. And you need one another. You depend on one another. That's the journey. This narrow path is not isolation. It's not something you have to do by yourself. We were never intended to be alone. So that's this whole body of Christ thing that man, we share the table together. And we're not the same. We're not perfect. But we can look at each other. You can do this. Stick to it. Don't give up. Don't quit. God is good. Keep your eyes on the prize. That's the church. The standard, obedience, the standard, perfection, the standard, be holy as I am holy. That's what God has called us to. His definition, not ours. Are you living up to this standard? Are you desiring this in your life? Is this your passion? We're going to wrap this up this morning. I've had a good time this morning. I've enjoyed the music. I've enjoyed the time at the table together in communion. Been challenged. It's one of the pleasures of my job is I get to study this and I get challenged all week long and I get to spill on you all. But I want you to take this seriously. And again, don't take the edges off. Don't take the roughness off. There's a sharpness to Jesus' words. He says, if you want to enter my kingdom, you've got to live this way. You've got to live this way. You can't compromise. You can't cut corners. You can't cheat. You've got to live this way. It doesn't matter how old you are. It Doesn't matter what race you are. Doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter. He says, you, as my followers, got to live this way. Are you? It's a simple question. Are you? Are you trying to negotiate? Are you trying to compromise? Are you trying to debate? The Yabbits? Yeah, but... God, yeah, but I will, but... I mean it, but... Well, think about the word but. It just kind of negates everything you've said before it. Jesus, I will follow, but... How did Jesus respond when people said that to him? Nope. Now, my way. If you're trying to negotiate, you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that negotiation. Many will say. Many. It's a terrifying word. You read that. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, didn't we? You'll say, depart from me. I never knew you. I hope maybe some of you are terrified this morning. That maybe that describes you. Because the good news is in this moment, you can fix that. You can simply say, yes, Jesus, I'm sorry. Forgive me. It's about you, it's not about me. We're going to close. Why don't you come on up, Sarah. I would... The altar is open, always. If you want to come and pray and say, yes. Interesting thing about the altar in the Old Testament in particular. Well, yeah, Old Testament. The altar was always a place of death. There were times of sacrifice and times of joy that the altar was used, but the altar always represented death. There was always something sacrificed on the altar. And that's one of the things I love about the altar is it is a place of death. Where we come and we die to self. We say, yes, Jesus, it's about you. It's not about me anymore. And here I give myself to you. So the altar is open if you want to come and you want to pray and you want to offer yourself back to the Lord, either for the first time or again. Say, you know what? I've been selfish. I've been negotiating. I've been bargaining. Today it stops. You're invited. If you want to just sit quietly and just pray and make that commitment, you can do that. But I want you to respond to what the Holy Spirit may be sharing with you this morning. So at this time, if you'd like to stand, stand. We'll sing this song together. I'm going to come at this time. It's not going to be long and drawn out. Not into that. The opportunity is here and is now for you to respond to whatever the Holy Spirit may be sharing with you.